When CIW invited me to speak about a faraway place, I thought about a person, Sheikh Rabia al-Hakahi, who luckily lives in a faraway place. This is in Al-Jove, Yemen, which is on the northern border. It's a territory. One of the great things in my job is not so much the places I've been, but the people I meet. And I thought about Sheikh Rabia partly because I haven't talked to him in quite a while, and I actually had called him last week, which is, I'll reveal that a little bit later. But he's also, as I said earlier, he's in a faraway place. And I think in some ways, the issues that he's dealing with, the issues that he revealed to us, is so indicative to not only a lot of the problems around the world, but certainly in the Middle East. Yemen, which I think is a place very few people have been, is right next to Saudi Arabia. When I flew into Sana'a, which is the capital, I was really surprised. It's one of the oldest cities in the world. It's been inhabited for over 2,500 years. And I was absolutely shocked and amazed by the beauty of it. Let me just tell you quickly why I was there. The Washington Post was doing a story about how the US government was promoting democracy around the world. And the reporter that I was working with, David Finkel, who was also a very good friend of mine, picked Yemen. And there was a small program run by NDI, National Democratic Institute for International Affairs. And they were doing the usual things, educating people, educating women on voting, things of that nature. And then out of the blue, 25 sheikhs from the territories in the northern part of Yemen approached them. And they said, you know, we've been having civil war in these territories for over 50 years. We want you to help us. We need to end it. And one of those sheikhs was Sheikh Rabia. And he approached us, when I say approached us, David Finkel and myself, and he said, look, I want you to see firsthand what it's like to live in tribal warfare and in an impoverished country. I want to take you to Al-Jove. This is where I'm from. These are, by the way, more photographs of Sana'a. I got a little out of order. So David went to the US Embassy in Sana'a and said, hey, you know, this tribal sheikh wants to take us to Al-Jove. What do you think? And they go, lawless territory, Al-Qaeda sympathies, home of bin Laden, the Yemeni government has no control, don't go. We talked to the Yemeni government and they said, we're not letting you go. So Sheikh Rabia said, look, I'm going to protect you, I'm going to take care of you. The only thing you have to worry about is people there may offend you. If you want to hear bad things about America or don't want to hear bad things about America, don't come. So a few days later, and I should mention 10 days before this meeting that we had with him, and this is when we're actually meeting him in a safe house outside of Sana'a, he was actually ambushed and almost killed in Al-Jove. So this evening and this night we meet him and his bodyguards, and we take a long trip to Al-Jove. And what I mean by long trip was this is an overnight trip where we, to avoid being detected, went through mountain passes, riverbeds, and throughout the night, Sheikh Rabia is on the phone having a really intense conversation. And I'm getting very nervous because this is about an hour and a half phone call. And finally I turned to our translator and I said, what's going on? And he turns to me and he goes, well, his second wife is really upset because you're not going to her house the first night, you're going to his first wives, his other wives that night. One lesson I learned is, if you think it's fun having more than one wife, it's not. So late at night, we pull over. We cross into Aljove, and to the right is a checkpoint that sees us, and they start shooting at us. We get through, we drive for another hour and a half, and we pull over. I have no idea where we are. Total darkness. You can see Sheikh Rabia on the phone. And we have great conversations with his guards who tell us how they prayed that America would be destroyed, a few things like that. We packed our things, laid out and slept. And then I woke up in the morning, and this was the view I had. I mean, it was just, the landscape was just absolutely extraordinary. Luckily, we did bring some baggage to sleep. So this is Aljove. And so, of course, in Yemen, you have tea a lot, which we did. And then we started our journey through Aljove. This is Sheikh Rabia with all his bodyguards. And the first thing we did was visit, of course, the downtown market and schools. This is a school that has an artillery shell that went through it. There's another village, which I'll show you photographs later, called Hamdan, which is the enemy village. And they shell each other, and this shell happened to go through the school. One thing that I learned, as you see here, all the women are covered. And one of the Yemeni people that we got to know really well, she's actually in Washington, D.C. now, attending a university. I asked her, I said, what was life like for you when you grew up as a little girl? And she goes, we didn't have to dress like this. We didn't have to cover ourselves. Women went to universities. We wore Western clothes. She goes, this only happened in the last 15 or 20 years when Saudi Arabia came in and started bringing money and offering to build schools and build hospitals. This was one of their conditions. And for me, it was really interesting because we obviously hear about missionaries from America going to Africa, for example, or even when I spent a lot of time in Russia and after the fall of the Soviet Union, there would be planes of American missionaries going to Russia. Saudi Arabia does the same thing. And they've been instrumental in changing this whole, or I should say, creating this concept of women being covered from head to toe, from not only Yemen, but as far away as Indonesia. And this was something that I started learning more and more, and it's really fascinating how the Saudi money has been able to do that. This is their school. One of the things, what's interesting about Sheikh Rabia is this is a place where there's few jobs, and he has to keep the place going. There's no police, there's no court system. Lots of times he walks out and he's giving money out to people. This is when we're traveling with his bodyguards. One of the great things about Yemen are these knives, and everybody has one. They're kind of curved, and it's a signature of Yemen. It's my best, one of my favorite things I brought back from there. This is Sheikh Rabia after giving money to some of the locals. As I was saying before, Sheikh Rabia, he has to rely a lot on negotiating because he's the law, but he can't enforce the law. So he spends a lot of time meeting. As you can see, there's guns everywhere. And of course, when he would go to meeting from one place to the next, we always brought a goat. And this was our lunch, which I had to sit with, but it was cute for a while anyway. I have to say the food was absolutely amazing. And this is kind of the atmosphere of the meetings that we would have, or he would have. We were just there to observe. One of the things they did a lot in Yemen, they do a lot, is chew khat, which is a mild narcotic. It's almost like marijuana. And they do it all day long, and it's a mild high. And the whole country does it. I don't know how they survive. I tried doing it, and nothing happened. But I think it's one of those things that you just have to do for a long time, and eventually something happens. This little boy who is 8 years old, handling the AK-47, was one of Rabia's sons, and he was the one in charge of us. And so at nighttime, wherever we were, if we needed anything, he was there to help us. And it's quite extraordinary. As the families there, the kids, as soon as they're able to walk, they help the family. They have chores. And it's an amazing thing to watch, how everybody works together, the kids and the parents. Of course, they don't really go to school, so this is Rabia in his home, and you'll see this is one of his villages, one of his wives, one of his homes, and in the distance is Hamdan, and that's the enemy village, and they constantly shell each other. And you can see the damage here in some of the buildings. Sheikh Rabia, before he was ambushed, never smoked. And he started smoking a week before we had this trip with him. And this is actually a shell hole in his home, where 2 people were killed. This guy is their watchman, and he's on top at the highest point. And I asked him, I said, how long have you been doing this? He says, every day for 25 years, 7 months minus 8 days. And this is his routine. He opens his lock and goes up. And the only export they have from America is this 50 caliber machine gun. And this is where he stands watch. And he has binoculars, and we were there, and he says, I see a Hamdam, he's getting on his tractor, and there's a couple walking down the street. And he says, with this gun, I could shoot him. There were 2 things that was happening. We were being stopped, and a lot of times people were really upset that he had 2 Americans with him. And that's what he's doing right now, is arguing why it was important for us to be there in this village. As I was saying before about him constantly mediating, one of the things that we came across was that one of the people in the village shot 4 people and killed 1 person. This is one of the 4 people that was shot. And the reason he did that, because he thought they had stolen one of his guns. So Rabia was thrown into this, and he knew that if he didn't figure out a compromise very quickly, there would be a revenge killing. So what he worked out was that the guy that killed the 1 person had to give that family 4 guns, and they banished him from the village. And that was something they all agreed on. But this is the type of negotiations he has to do, because he, as I said before, he has no police, he has no court. He has to come up with something that everybody will agree with. And I got to say, that's quite a challenge. We were there for about a week, and he started receiving calls from the Yemeni government. And they said, we hear you have 2 Americans with you. If you don't bring them out, we're going to come in and get them. So Rabia snuck us back out of the country, out of Al-Jove. The sad thing is that the peace thing that NDI tried to work out did not. As you can read here, that basically the president of Yemen did not want this peace thing to happen. The sheikhs had 25,000 armed fighters, and the last thing he wanted to do was bring them together. And Saleh met with the Americans and said, you can't trust the sheikhs. And he met the sheikhs and said, you can't trust the Americans. It fell apart, and Rabia had to flee Al-Jove about 6 or 7 months after I saw him, and we just called him a couple weeks ago, or about a week ago, and he's in Saudi Arabia, and he's trying to get back to Al-Jove. So that's my talk, and it's 0 seconds. Thank you.